In LA, a young woman, Maya, dreams big but secretly sleeps in the library. Among books, she finds not just refuge, but a future. But when a shocking family secret threatens everything, she will have to choose the silence of the past or the courage to rewrite her own story. The air of Los Angeles, usually thick with smog and the distant hum of traffic, carried a different scent for Maya Rodriguez. It was the fragrance of old paper, bookbinding glue, and the subtle must of history volumes that mingled with the aroma of freshly brewed morning coffee. This was the scent of the Los Angeles Central Library, Maya's sanctuary. At 17, she moved with the quiet grace of a ghost among the towering shelves. Her brown eyes, which should have sparkling with the carefree spirit of youth, carried a weight that most adults would never know. On the outside, Maya was the model student at Franklin High School, impeccable grades, a gifted orator on the debate team, and a brilliant mind in science. On the inside, she was a tightrope walker, constantly balancing on the wire of invisibility that kept her from tumbling into the harsh reality of homelessness. Her routine had been forged by necessity over the last 6 months. The downward spiral began when her mother, Sophia, lost her full-time nursing job and their small apartment in Echo Park. The promise of a temporary solution with a distant aunt, Elena, became a painful charade. Aunt Elena's cramped bungalow in Palmdale, more than an hour away, rarely had the space or peace Maya needed to study. Some nights were spent in a rented car, where the cold LA night was a cruel and unforgiving companion. But the library was her salvation. It was the only place she could truly disappear. As the last employees locked up and the main lights dimmed, she would sneak into one of the most forgotten corners of the science fiction section, behind a towering stack of rare, antiquated volumes. There, among stories of distant worlds and impossible futures, she would unfurl a thin sleeping bag and curl up. The concrete floor was hard and the air was frigid, but it was a palace compared to her reality outside. She guarded her secret with military precision. No one knew. Not her best friend, Chloe, a wealthy and naive girl from Beverly Hills, not her teachers, and not even the school counselor, Mr. Harrison, who seemed to possess an uncanny ability to see beyond the obvious. Maya feared that if her truth was revealed, the carefully constructed house of cards, her scholarship, her applications to prestigious colleges, and her only chance at a different future would collapse. Her father, a brilliant and talented immigrant from Mexico, had been deported when she was 10. Before he left, he made her promise that she would use her education to rise above their circumstances, to achieve a life he could never have. That promise was her constant motivation, a fire that burned against the cold. The library wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a constant reminder of her purpose. On this particular night, the wind outside howled, rattling the library's tall windows. Maya pulled a worn copy of George Orwell's 1984 from her backpack, a grim irony not lost on her as she sought invisibility while reading about constant surveillance. The solitude was a constant companion, but it was in the silence of the library that she found her greatest strength. She heard the final click of the main doors as Arthur, the gentle middle-aged janitor, locked up. That heavy sound was her cue. She was alone, in the heart of a world of stories, quietly writing her own. Her eyes scanned the shelves, seeking not just comfort, but the inspiration to persevere. She knew that every sunrise brought the risk of being discovered, but also the promise of a new day to fight for her place in the world. The fear was a constant presence, but the hope, fueled by the knowledge she absorbed, was an even greater force. She closed her eyes, breathing in the air of the place that, for a few hours, was her home. Maya's phone alarm, set to the lowest possible volume, vibrated softly at 5:45 a.m. It was the starting gun for her race against time. The scent of fresh coffee already mingled with the old paper, a telltale sign that Arthur, the janitor, was about to begin his morning rounds. Maya moved with the precision of a ghost. Her sleeping bag was swiftly folded and stowed inside her backpack, already heavy with textbooks and a change of clothes. She would then slip into the staff bathroom she had discovered by chance for her morning routine. A quick brush of her teeth, a comb through her hair, and a splash of cold water on her face. Every detail was timed. Every movement was practiced to perfection, ensuring no trace of her overnight presence would remain. Her secret was her armor. As she slipped out of the library and into the street, the crisp morning air greeted her, carrying the scent of a new day and the promise of a fresh start. She walked the few blocks to Franklin High School, making sure to arrive early, long before the majority of students. This allowed her to use the showers in the school's locker room, blending into the morning routines of the sports teams. Despite the chronic exhaustion, Maya's grades were exemplary. She was a star on the school's debate team and dedicated hours to an ambitious science project on renewable energy. Her history teacher, Mr. Evans, a middle-aged man with thick-rimmed glasses and a genuine love for forgotten figures of the past, saw a rare spark in her. He constantly encouraged her to apply for scholarships to prestigious universities. "Maya, you have unlimited potential," he would say, his enthusiasm sincere. "Don't let anything stop you from achieving what you were born to do." Each of these words was a powerful, if terrifying, reminder of the precipice on which she stood. The pressure was immense. She knew that a single slip-up, a single moment where her situation was exposed, could bring down her entire house of cards. That morning, as she left the library, Maya spotted a familiar figure. Chloe, her best friend, waving from a parked car. Chloe, with her bright blonde hair and easy smile, was Maya's opposite, a girl from a wealthy family who lived in a mansion in Beverly Hills. She was kind and loyal, and her friendship with Maya was genuine, despite the stark differences in their lives. "Hey, sleepyhead," Chloe called out, laughing. "Come on, my dad can drop us off. We have a calc test today, and you promised to help me cram." Maya smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. She got into the luxury car. As Chloe chattered about a weekend party, Maya stared out the window, watching the sun rise over the rooftops of Los Angeles. A sun that warmed everyone, but revealed to many the cold reality of their lives. The contrast was a silent ache, but also a relentless motivation. Later that day, the watchful eye of Mr. Harrison became more persistent. The school counselor, known for his knack for detecting hidden student problems, had noticed Maya's persistent fatigue and her reluctance to talk about her home life. He had seen that same distant gaze before in other students quietly battling personal struggles. He tried inviting her to group sessions on college applications, but she always found an excuse to meet with him one-on-one. One afternoon, he invited her for coffee after school, under the pretext of discussing a summer program she should apply for. Maya agreed, but her guard was up. At the coffee shop, Mr. Harrison, with his gentle voice, asked about her summer plans. Maya responded confidently, describing her interest in volunteer research. "And your mother, Maya, how is she? Is she excited about your plans?" he asked, carefully observing her reaction. Maya's smile flickered for a fraction of a second. "She's doing well, Mr. Harrison. Working hard, as always. She's very proud." He noticed the small pause, the fleeting glance she gave toward the window before recomposing herself. He didn't push, but his suspicion solidified. He knew something was wrong, and that Maya was hiding a painful truth. The empathy in his eyes was genuine, and he felt that soon Maya's silent truth would no longer be silent. He knew his intervention was inevitable, but he wanted her to feel safe enough to trust him when the time was right. The pressure was immense. She knew that a single slip-up, a single moment where her situation was exposed,
could bring down her entire house of cards. That morning, as she left the library, Maya spotted a familiar figure. Chloe, her best friend, waving from a parked car. Chloe, with her bright blonde hair and easy smile, was Maya's opposite, a girl from a wealthy family who lived in a mansion in Beverly Hills. She was kind and loyal, and her friendship with Maya was genuine, despite the stark differences in their lives. "Hey, sleepyhead," Chloe called out, laughing. "Come on, my dad can drop us off. We have a calc test today, and you promised to help me cram." Maya smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. She got into the luxury car. As Chloe chattered about a weekend party, Maya stared out the window, watching the sun rise over the rooftops of Los Angeles. A sun that warmed everyone, but revealed to many the cold reality of their lives. The contrast was a silent ache, but also a relentless motivation. Later that day, the watchful eye of Mr. Harrison became more persistent. The school counselor, known for his knack for detecting hidden student problems, had noticed Maya's persistent fatigue and her reluctance to talk about her home life. He had seen that same distant gaze before in other students quietly battling personal struggles. He tried inviting her to group sessions on college applications, but she always found an excuse to meet with him one-on-one. One afternoon, he invited her for coffee after school, under the pretext of discussing a summer program she should apply for. Maya agreed, but her guard was up. At the coffee shop, Mr. Harrison, with his gentle voice, asked about her summer plans. Maya responded confidently, describing her interest in volunteer research. "And your mother, Maya, how is she? Is she excited about your plans?" he asked, carefully observing her reaction. Maya's smile flickered for a fraction of a second. "She's doing well, Mr. Harrison. Working hard, as always. She's very proud." He noticed the small pause, the fleeting glance she gave toward the window before recomposing herself. He didn't push, but his suspicion solidified. He knew something was wrong, and that Maya was hiding a painful truth. The empathy in his eyes was genuine, and he felt that soon Maya's silent truth would no longer be silent. He knew his intervention was inevitable, but he wanted her to feel safe enough to trust him when the time was right.
Maya's life was a meticulous and exhausting cycle of deception and excellence. At Franklin High, she was the model student, highly engaged in her classes, a brilliant mind in the science club, and a sharp debater. After school, instead of going home, she stayed on campus under the pretense of extra projects and studying. Her time was meticulously divided between an empty classroom where she would review notes and complete homework and the school library, where the kind librarian Miss Jenkins, an elderly woman with glasses perched on her nose and a fascination for historical romance, saw her as a protégé. Maya not only conducted research for her assignments, but also helped organize shelves and catalog new books, a way of repaying the only stability she knew. This routine allowed her to stay at school until the very last minute, avoiding the curious glances of her peers and the need to explain her destination. Her mother, Sophia, was staying with a distant cousin in Palmdale, over an hour and a half away from Los Angeles. Sophia worked 2 temporary jobs and sent Maya the little money she could spare for food and essential supplies. The late-night calls from her mother were a mix of relief and guilt for Maya. "How is school, mija? Are you eating well?" Sophia's voice would ask, laden with worry and longing. Maya always responded with a false smile in her voice. "Everything's great, Mama. Perfect grades, I'm studying a lot at the library, and Mr. Harrison is helping me with my college applications." She omitted the cold nights, the back pain from the hard floor, and the constant anxiety of being discovered. With each lie, a piece of her heart would ache, but she knew that keeping her mother optimistic was crucial for Sophia's fragile sanity. Her mother didn't need another burden. The humility of their situation was a secret she carried alone. One afternoon, as she walked towards the public library, Maya saw a flyer pinned to a light post.
Angeleno Scholarship for Brilliant Youth, a unique opportunity. The scholarship, sponsored by a local philanthropic foundation, would cover all expenses for a California university, including housing. It was her ticket out, her only hope for a dignified and secure future. She knew the competition would be fierce, with hundreds of other students across LA vying for the same opportunity. But Maya felt a shiver of fierce determination. This wasn't just a scholarship. It was the promise of a home. A promise that she and her mother could live under the same roof without the constant worry of being displaced again. The flyer was a beacon in the midst of her darkness. She looked at the flyer, then at the imposing building of the public library, her nightly refuge. The books inside held the knowledge, and knowledge, she knew, was the key to unlocking the doors of her future. The pressure was greater than ever, but the prize, the chance at a new life for her and her mother, was worth every sacrifice. She decided to apply, dedicating every spare minute to polishing her essay and gathering letters of recommendation. The hope of a new beginning was the engine that drove her. She knew the scholarship was the only way to escape the web of lies she was living and finally be able to embrace her mother with the certainty that they would never have to be separated again.
The Angeleno Scholarship seemed within Maya's grasp. She had passed the first and second rounds of interviews, impressing the evaluators with her intelligence, passion, and a life story that, although incomplete, demonstrated remarkable resilience. The next step, however, was fate's cruel punchline, a home visit from a foundation representative, part of the verification process. A cold panic gripped Maya. What was she going to do? There was no home to visit. She had gone to great lengths to ensure the foundation and the school knew nothing of her situation. And now, the truth was about to explode in a devastating way. The image of Miss Jenkins and Mr. Harrison looking at her with disappointment was a form of torture. Desperate, she called her mother, Sophia. Sophia, on the other end of the line, responded with surprising calmness. "Don't worry, mija. I have an idea. My cousin Elena's address will work. She owes us a favor." Maya, while relieved, felt a deep discomfort. Her Aunt Elena was a distant and enigmatic figure, always involved in questionable schemes. Why would she help now? The answer came in a tone Sophia rarely used. "Elena has her own reasons, Maya. Just do as I say. This will work." A few days later, Maya and Sophia went to Aunt Elena's house, a small bungalow in a modest LA neighborhood. The house was clean but dusty, as if it hadn't been lived in for a long time. Elena, a thin woman with sharp eyes and a forced smile, greeted them with a forced cordiality. "The representative will be here tomorrow. Just say this is your child at home, Maya, and that your mother is staying here temporarily, helping with a sick cousin," Elena instructed, her words laced with a touch of coldness. Maya felt dirty, as if she were living a lie even bigger than the one she was already living. The humility of her situation was already painful, and the blatant deception was even more so.
The next morning, Miss Davies, the scholarship representative, visited Elena's home. Maya and Sophia performed the charade with mastery. Maya, with her calm and confident voice, spoke about her dreams and passion, while her mother smiled with pride, and Elena played the part of the supportive aunt. Miss Davies seemed satisfied, but as she left, she handed Maya a sealed envelope. "This is an important document about the scholarship, Maya, to be opened only by you." Maya thanked her, feeling the weight of the secret. On the bus ride back to the library, curiosity won out. She opened the envelope. Inside, there was not only information about the scholarship, but an additional document, a bank statement for a trust fund in her name with a substantial sum. And the name of the fund administrator was Silas Vance. Maya froze. Silas Vance, the name of her late father's great-uncle, a man she barely remembered seeing, known for being a ruthless and distant businessman? She vaguely recalled family whispers about how Silas had inherited all of her grandfather's assets when her father, David, was deported, leaving them with nothing.
But a fund in her name? The shock was immense. Why would Silas Vance, the man she believed was responsible for her family's financial ruin, have created a fund for her? The truth she would soon discover was far more complex and haunting than she could ever have imagined. The peace she sought with the scholarship crumbled into a tangled web of family mysteries.
The name Silas Vance reverberated in Maya's mind, transforming the relief she felt from the bank statement into a paralyzing shock. The amount in the trust fund was substantial, a number she never thought she'd see in her life. But the presence of her great-uncle's name, the man her mother had always described as the one responsible for them losing everything, was a paradox. Why would he do this? The image of Silas, whom she barely remembered from her childhood, was that of a cold and calculating man, whose financial interests always seemed to come before any family ties. The pain of her mother, at her own sense of powerlessness in the face of their life's radical change, and the fact that Silas was the silent symbol of that tragedy, was a reality she carried in her heart. Maya didn't hesitate. She confronted her mother, Sophia, with the statement. Sophia's face paled when she saw Silas's name and the amount. Tears filled her eyes. "He is a monster, mija," she stammered, her voice choked with emotion and an old pain. "He took everything from us when your father was gone. How could he have done this?" Sophia explained that, after David's deportation, Silas had taken advantage of the family's vulnerability, legally maneuvering to gain control of Maya's grandfather's assets, which were supposed to be divided among the siblings, including David. The family was helpless and lacked the resources to fight in court. Maya's life had been turned upside down because of Silas's actions. The story, painful and filled with bitterness, was a part of her family's life that she had always known existed, but had never been told in such detail.
However, there was a missing piece to the puzzle. Why the trust fund in her name? The answer came from an unexpected source, her Aunt Elena. When Maya called her, the statement still in her hands, Elena hesitated before revealing a dark family secret. "Your grandfather, David Sr., knew Silas was greedy," Elena confessed, her voice low. "He suspected that Silas would try to manipulate the inheritance, so before he died, he created a secret fund for you, Maya, his only granddaughter, with the condition that Silas be the administrator. He thought Silas, out of ego, wouldn't refuse, and that it would be a way to ensure you had something, away from the prying eyes of the law." The news was a shock. Her grandfather had tried to protect her, but by trusting the wrong person. The trust in Silas, which was now revealed as an act of her grandfather's naivete, was the reason for her current situation. The revelation was a whirlwind of emotions for Maya. Sadness for her grandfather's naivete, anger at Silas's manipulation, and a new determination. She had been a pawn in a family game far bigger than she had ever imagined. The trust fund was not a gift, it was a trap. A way for Silas to maintain control or perhaps even illegally benefit over the years. The silent truth about her past was unraveling, and it was not a pretty sight. Maya knew she could no longer hide among the books. She would have to face the real world and the web of lies woven by Silas Vance to protect her future and honor her grandfather's memory.
Armed with the truth about the trust fund and Silas's manipulations, Maya found a new kind of courage. She was no longer the invisible girl hiding in the shadows. She had a purpose. The first step was to seek out Mr. Harrison. The counselor, who had already suspected Maya's situation, listened to her with attention and a sense of gravity. He wasn't shocked by the story of family greed, as he had seen many similar situations before. But the involvement of a trust fund and the magnitude of the amount alerted him to the legal complexity. Mr. Harrison, a former lawyer before becoming a counselor, knew they would need professional help. He referred Maya to a Los Angeles lawyer, Mr. Ramirez, known for his ethics and for defending the less fortunate. Mr. Ramirez, a shrewd and experienced man, analyzed the documents and Maya's story. He discovered that Silas,
as the fund administrator, had made suspicious withdrawals over the years, with vague justifications that seemed illegal. He was embezzling money from Maya's fund. The lawyer explained that if Silas were caught in the act, he would not only lose the administration of the fund, but could also face criminal charges and lose his own inheritance from his father, David's uncle, which was tied to a good conduct clause in the original will. The truth that Maya's grandfather had tried to protect was in fact becoming the weapon to unmask Silas's greed.
The legal battle began. Mr. Ramirez arranged a mediation meeting where Silas and his lawyers faced Maya and her legal team. Silas, arrogant as ever, mocked the homeless girl who now thinks she's rich. But when Mr. Ramirez presented the evidence of the improper withdrawals from the fund and mentioned the good conduct clause in his father's will, Silas's face went pale. His lawyers, realizing the real danger, tried to make a settlement. But Silas, in his fury and stubbornness, refused. He would not accept being blackmailed by a child. He believed he could manipulate the situation, as he always had. His arrogance was his greatest weakness. In the middle of the confrontation, Maya's patience wore thin. She stood up and spoke with a firm, clear voice that echoed in the meeting room. "You used my grandfather, Mr. Vance. You used his trust and our vulnerability. I am not a homeless girl. I am the heir to my grandfather's dream, and I will fight for it. You can have all the money in the world, but your soul is poor." Maya's words were a blow to Silas. He looked at her with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. He never expected the invisible girl who hid in the shadows to be his greatest adversary. The tables were turning, and Silas, who always thought he was in control, was about to fall into his own trap.
The tension in the meeting room was palpable. Silas, his face white with fury and defeat, glared at Maya with a hatred she had never seen. He knew the game was turning. His lawyers, desperate, called for a pause to reconsider the settlement offer. They begged Silas to accept, but his arrogance wouldn't allow him to see the reality. He was certain he could find a way to get rid of the accusation. "No child will defeat me," he muttered to himself. The battle wasn't just about money. It was about pride. It was then that Mr. Ramirez revealed his ace in the hole, a hidden clause in Maya's grandfather's original will. The grandfather, deeply distrusting of Silas, had inserted one final condition. If Silas was proven dishonest in the administration of any asset for a minor heir, he would not only lose control of the fund, but any future inheritance would automatically revert to the harmed heir, in this case, Maya. Silas's lawyers were shocked. Silas had underestimated the cunning of his own father and Maya's intelligence in unearthing the truth. The tables had turned. Silas was about to lose everything, and Maya, the girl who slept in the library, was about to become the rightful heir to a fortune. The news was a devastating blow to Silas. He sat in his chair, his posture defeated, the power he had accumulated for years draining away before his eyes. He was no longer the ruthless businessman. He was an old, greedy man caught in his own trap. His lawyers, realizing the battle was lost, withdrew from the room. Silas was left alone, facing the young woman he had underestimated and the justice he believed he was above. The quiet justice of the court was swift and decisive. The judge, after analyzing all the evidence presented by Mr. Ramirez, bank statements, fund documents, and a copy of the original will with the secret clause, handed down the sentence. Silas Vance was stripped of all his functions as Maya's fund administrator and ordered to return all embezzled funds with interest. In addition,
His father's inheritance was officially transferred to Maya. Silas's face was a mixture of fury, disbelief, and defeat. For the first time in his life, he couldn't control the narrative, and his greed had led to his ruin. Maya, next to her mother, Sophia, and Mr. Harrison, felt a mixture of relief and sadness. The victory was sweet, but the emotional cost was high. Justice was being served, but the web of family lies and heartache was painful. Sophia, with tears in her eyes, squeezed Maya's hand. "Your grandfather was always a good man, mi hija," she whispered. "He protected you in a way we never knew." It was a form of silent forgiveness, not only for the grandfather, but for the destiny that had led them down so many difficult paths. As she left the courthouse, Maya felt different. It wasn't just about the money, but the feeling of having honored her grandfather and having fought for her own truth. She was no longer the invisible girl who slept in the library. She was Maya Rodriguez, a young woman who had faced the darkness of her past and emerged with the light of justice. The dignity she had traded for survival was now restored, stronger than ever, and she knew that this victory was only the beginning of a new story. With the trust fund and her grandfather's inheritance fully restored and under her own administration, Maya found herself with a fortune she never imagined. Her first action was to secure a safe and stable home for herself and her mother. They moved into a small, cozy house in a quiet Los Angeles neighborhood where they could finally enjoy the peace and privacy they had longed for. The smell of home, the warmth of the sunlight coming through the windows was a feeling Maya would never forget. Sophia, freed from the burden of her daily struggle, was able to dedicate herself to her true passion, volunteering at hospitals. She smiled more, and the sadness that had once consumed her had been replaced by a glow of hope. But Maya did not forget about Mr. Harrison and Mr. Ramirez, the men who had helped her fight for her truth. She made sure they were both duly rewarded for their dedication and belief in her. She also made sure that Mr. Harrison, who had seen the truth behind her lies, was the first to know of her next decision. The counselor, moved, said that Maya was proof that kindness and courage always prevail. The Angelino Scholarship, which was the catalyst for this entire journey, was still on the table. Maya accepted it, but now with a new perspective. She enrolled at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, with the renewed focus on social studies and public policy, inspired by her own experience and the desire to help other young people in similar situations. She continued to excel academically, but now without the overwhelming fear and pressure of the past. The UCLA library became a new sanctuary, no longer a place to hide, but a space to grow and learn freely. Maya never forgot the cold and lonely nights at the public library. In a gesture that honored her own journey and her grandfather's spirit, she dedicated a significant portion of her new fortune to creating the Maya Rodriguez Foundation. The foundation's goal was simple yet profound: to offer safe housing, educational support, and mentorship to high school students in Los Angeles who were experiencing homelessness. She worked in partnership with Franklin High School and the Central Public Library itself, the place that had sheltered her in her darkest moments. The janitor, Arthur, Mr. Evans, and Miss Jenkins all became honorary advisors to the foundation, their experiences and kindness forming the basis for the new project. On the day of the inauguration of the first support center for the Maya Rodriguez Foundation in a renovated building near Franklin High, Maya gave an emotional speech. "This foundation is not about money," she said, her voice choked with emotion, looking at her mother and her friends. "It's about the silent truth that many young people carry. It's about the dignity that each of us deserves. And it's about how a community can turn an act of desperation into a seed of hope." She thanked everyone who had helped her,
especially Mr. Harrison for seeing beyond her lies, and Miss Eleanor, mentioning her wisdom from library stories for her silent inspiration. The lesson of her life, she concluded, was that true wealth is not in what one inherits, but in what one builds with kindness and courage.
Years passed, and the Maya Rodriguez Foundation flourished, becoming a beacon of hope for young people across Los Angeles. Maya, now a successful and accomplished woman, continued to lead the foundation, her passion and empathy serving as the driving forces behind every initiative. She was a powerful voice for the rights of homeless students, and her story inspired thousands. Chloe, her childhood friend, had become a loyal partner in the foundation, using her resources and connections to expand the mission's reach. On a sunny spring afternoon, Maya walked through the hallways of the Central Public Library, the same place that had once been her hiding place. The smell of books still comforted her, but now it was a different kind of comfort, the comfort of memories that were painful but had shaped her into who she had become. She stopped near the science fiction shelf where she had once curled up in a sleeping bag. A young person, with their head down and their eyes tired, was reading a book there, seeming to be in a world of their own. Maya saw a reflection of herself in that young person, the same silent search for something more. She approached, a gentle smile on her lips. "Is that a good book?" she asked. The young person looked up, surprised, but a hesitant smile appeared on their face. They talked for a few minutes about the book, about dreams, and about the future. Maya then handed them a card with the name and contact information for the Maya Rodriguez Foundation. "If you need anything, or just a safe place to study, we can help," she said, her eyes conveying a deep understanding. No one should have to fight alone. The young person looked at the card, then at Maya, and a spark of hope was ignited in their eyes. As she walked away, Maya thought of her grandfather, David Sr., her mother, Sophia, Mr. Miller, briefly mentioning his bakery in Oak Creek was thriving thanks to acts of kindness, Miss Eleanor, remembering her wisdom and empathy, and everyone who had been a part of her journey. She had transformed shame into dignity, desperation into purpose. The truth of her story, once silent, now echoed, not just in words but in actions that transformed lives. She had found her place in the world, not hidden among books, but by building a future where every young person could have the chance to write their own story freely. The grandfather's legacy, which began with an act of protection and kindness, continued to expand, proving that the true sanctuary was not a place, but the love and compassion that united people. The California sun shone brightly over the UCLA campus, the same campus that Maya had only once dared to dream of. She was no longer hiding, she was thriving. As a postgraduate student and director of her foundation, she was a force to be reckoned with, a voice that brought to light the realities that many preferred to ignore. Her journey from homelessness to being the heir to a fortune was a story that inspired, but what she considered her greatest success was not the money or the power. It was the face of every young person she had helped, the sparkle of hope in their eyes. At a gala for the foundation one evening, Maya was on stage, surrounded by everyone who had helped her. Her mother, Sophia, with a radiant smile, Mr. Harrison, now a friend and mentor, Chloe, her loyal partner, and even Mr. Ramirez, who greeted her with a respectful nod. Maya looked out at the audience and saw faces she had helped, young people who were now on the path to fulfillment. The peace she had sought in a sleeping bag had been replaced by purpose. "Once," she began, her voice soft but full of emotion, "I thought my story was a tragedy, a story of a father who left, of a homeless family, of dark nights in a library. But I was wrong. My story wasn't about what I lost, it was about what I gained. The compassion of a janitor, the watchful eye of a counselor, the loyalty of a friend, and the wisdom of a grandfather who, even from the grave, gave me the chance to fight. The truth can be painful, but it has the power to set us free." She looked at her mother, who was in the front row. Sophia's tears were not of sadness, but of pride. Her father's dream had come true, not as he had planned, but in a way that honored Maya's strength. Maya's story was an echo that resonated through the walls of the library, the courthouse hallway, and the lives she had touched. At the end of the night, as she prepared to go home, a young person approached her. It was the same young person she had met in the library months before. They thanked her, with tears in their eyes. "You changed my life," they said. "You showed me that hope is real." Maya smiled and hugged them. That hug, that moment of connection and gratitude, was worth more than any wealth. True wealth, she knew, was not found in inheritances or trust funds, but in every life she helped to transform. She had found her place in the world, not hidden among books, but by building a future where every young person could have the chance to write their own story freely. The truth, once silent, now echoed, and the journey of the girl who slept in the library had come to a truly happy ending.
Want more stories like this? A new story awaits you tomorrow. Subscribe to the channel and get your daily dose of emotion.